Bottom of page Mem Zayin. Va'inyan hu. Mevur b'Likutei Torah. It's explained in Likutei Torah. Va'inyan hamofsim ha'atzumi asu kama tanayim v'amarayim. Regarding the awesome miracles that were made by the previous sages, the Tanaim Amarayim, like Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, like the one we just mentioned, Sha'amar Ginai Nahar Chalukli Mimecha, where he said to the river Ginai, split from me your waters. Ki Aide Esek HaTorah Shalahem, we said that by, I think we did do this.
I think we did.
No, but it's okay. We're just starting it. That by their occupation in Torah, they just were on a level that their Torah learning drew down from above the Hishtalshlus, from the Orein Sof. Right? And therefore we see that all these guys were called Chasidech, seemingly at the level we've been describing it, like level 1. They all, through their occupation in Torah, they were able to draw down a combination of these two qualities of bracha and tefillah. They went to the highest places and they drew it down. Just like Pinchas ben Yair, that through their occupation in Torah, there became a change in like some novel action in the world. And this is a true chiddush that wasn't even in the root and the source of the world, right? Because that's what we say, when it comes to a bracha, there's not really a chiddush going on there, because the guy just takes what's already been allotted from the source and sends it down. These guys made a true chiddush. Something was not in the world, like this river Ginai was not intending to split in Hashem's will, right? So they make a true chiddush in the world, and they can bring it down. K'mo chalukas anar, like we're seeing here by this splitting of the river. Shushinu v'chiddush gam lagabi shorshu makar dahanar. It's something completely new, even in compared to how this root of this river was, like in the primordial thoughts of Hashem. Like he wasn't intending to do that, so to speak, right? Hamayla the tefillah, that's what, so to speak, the quality that prayer has, right? That it can change Hashem's will. And at the same time, it has the other quality that this change happens not through a request, Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, but rather through his command, which is the maila of the bracha, shebederech tzivoy, which is what blessings have, which, as we've been saying, they come in a way of commanding, not requesting. V'yesh lomar sha'chidish b'zeh she'Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, no, so Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai himshich yiris geshami magdei amiras Torah. So we want to say, this is the Rebbe's chiddush, that this novel concept of the Rashbi, that he drew down rain, al de amiras Torah, by saying Torah, legabe amofsim atzumim, over and above the awesome wonders, sha'asu kama tanoim, v'amarayim, that the other tanoim and amarayim did, al de esek Torah shalahem, just by learning Torah. So what was Rabbi Shimon's unique addition? Shashinoi ba'olam sha'asu kol tanoim v'amarayim, is that the change in the world by all the other Tanaim v'Amoraim, who are there tzivay v'gazer Hashem. This is kind of, we alluded to this. It was by them decreeing it and commanding it. They had to like take an action and actually put their will in place and sort of undo Hashem's will and say, we're doing something new here, Hashem. Kamo Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, shetziva v'gazar al-nar, that he commanded and decreed on that river, she'achlok es meimav, that it should divide its waters. Whereas the Chiddush, the Yeridus Mater, the Amiras Torah, the Rashbi, what is the novel concept of the rainfall? Through Rashi saying the Torah, is that the Hagam Hadrush Sha'amar, is that even though in the Torah that he said, Lo Hayat Sivoy Klau, there was no commandment, Gam Lo Beremez, not even in a hint, right? He wasn't getting involved in like addressing the issue, not even hinting to the issue of rain. Nonetheless, just by him saying the Torah, the rain fell. So that's a marked difference between all the other Tanaim v'Amoraim. In general, we hold that Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai was uniquely higher than all the other ones, right? He was like number one Tana. And so in this, we're seeing his greatness, that even though they also could connect tefillah and bracha, They also went to the highest places, which creates change in the will, and drew it down drew it down by way of command. He was able to do something they weren't, which was that he didn't even have to command it, right? It just happened by itself, automatically. So according to this, we can say, this that the Rebbe Rasha brings in his mimer, this example of the rainfall of the Rashbi by him saying Torah, hu bichdei l'ramez, it's in order for, because the Rebbe Rasha there is hinting that this is really what it means, that when he's trying to explain the concept of chasidecha yivarechucha, right? When he's trying to explain what a chassid is and how they have this unique power, he's just leading up to this by explaining the difference between tefillah and bracha, and how the other Tanaim sort of had that ability through their Torah learning. But ultimately, he wants to explain that the true Indian of chasidecha is like this Indian of the Rashbi, where it was an automatic and he didn't have to command. You following this? Yeah? Everybody's on board? Okay, so going into Os Hey. Hey. How you doing? So he says like this. Mavar ba Maimer. Again, we're still with this Rebbe Rashav's Maimer, and he explains in that Maimer, Hashayches divarachu ko, right? Which is, remember how we broke up the word yivarachucha, is we said yivarachu ko, but they can bless it and bring it down into a place called ko, which is Malchus. So what's the connection between that? Hamshacha b'malchus, me'orin social l'mayla mishtalshlus, that what is the connection between drawing down from the Orin Sof above the Ishtalshlus into Ko, into Malchus? What's the connection of that to Chasidecha, Dafka? Why is it that something called a Chasid can do this only? And he explains this, right? Al pi mashkasuv harambam, based on what the Rambam says, Hachiluk lebein Chesed letzedaka. Right? The Rambam, this is al pi halacha, although really, no, he's bringing from more Nevuchim over here in the Rambam. So it's more of a philosophical concept here. But what's the difference between chesed and tzedakah? Just bepashtus, like they're both kind of similar. Why are there two words for a very similar thing? What's the difference between them? And he says there the tzedakah hu inyan hayosher, right? Tzedakah means to be upright. In other words, tzedakah comes from the word tzedek, right? So in other words, what are you doing when you give tzedakah? You're doing like the right thing. Righteous. You're being righteous. You're doing the right thing. The upright, upstanding thing to do. And what is it that's righteous and upright? To give each person in accordance with what's fitting to him. You know, it's like the correct way of going about your life. But tzedek, you did it right. Which means each one has a certain lifestyle or like set of needs that's unique to them. And when you give tzedakah, the word itself, tzedakah, tells you how and how much to give. And in what manner to give, and why you're giving, because you're trying to meet the needs of each and every one where they are. Because that's the upright thing. V'chesed, whereas chesed is not that at all. Chesed hu haflagas hatov lehetiv yosef mashahu roy. When you're giving chesed, it's not taking into account the proper status of the person you're giving to. It's just like a massive giving. Haflagas hatov means like a massive giving to give good more than what the person is fitting. You're not taking into account what's upright and what's not upright. You're just like a Baal Chesed, right? Which means everybody's just getting more than they can handle, right? And you're not really taking into account what's, so to speak, what's right, you know? Because you might give someone Chesed more than what's fitting for them. But that's what Chesed wants to do all the time. Doesn't care about whether or not you're giving past the boundaries of what's fit for this particular individual.
Like, so this should go on like Gevura, but it's very strict.
It is strict, right? In other words, you if you give tzedakah to a place which is not roy, it's not even called tzedakah, right? So I have your certain tzedakah money, and you give it to, like, so to speak, a place which is not fit according to tzedakah. You didn't give tzedakah because you didn't do the upright thing. But you did. It's still called giving chesed, because chesed just doesn't. That's not called by it's going into its proper category. It's just called by the giver wanting to give as much as he can to everyone. It's just give. Yeah.
Is there some similarity here between like
chesed and a chassid? Like, is it purposefully like the same? Like,
Yeah,
root?
that's
Like,
it is. Yeah.
They're no coincidences.
Okay,
No, that's-
so I'm starting to like think there's something going on here.
Yes, you've found it, my friend. Discovered the great mystery. That's why they call them Hasidim, because they're based on this concept of Chesed. And but mind you, in the Maimer, let's just clarify. He's exactly explaining, right, why the Chasidecha have this crazy power. Let's say up to the level even of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who's like the ultimate Chassid, that he can bring rain without, even commanding it, and change the will of God automatically. He's trying to say, why is he able to do that? What's the connection? Because he's called a chassid. And that's why he's explaining what chesed is, because this is the whole point. He's trying to explain what's uniquely in that name, chesed, which is a chassid, which enables him to do that. So yeah, that's the whole point.
It's kind of sounds like this is saying that a chassid and a tzaddik are different, like in terms of.
They are. They are. It's
The
because exactly, as I said before, there's Yashar, Tzaddik, Tamim, and Chassid, and really they're all different levels of tzaddikim. They're not. It's not that a Chassid is not a tzaddik. The real the Chasidecha that we're talking about here, not like a borrowed term. It's just that in tzaddikim themselves, there's like rankings of the different levels of the tzaddikim. I think we're going to get to it. I mean, we're definitely going to get to it inside this mimer, but in the mimer itself, he points us to a sicha from the Rebbe Rashab in Torah Shalom, which is like breaks down this thing in detail, like only the way the Rebbe Rashab, called the Rambam of Chassidus, does. And he tells you the exact difference between all those four levels of tzaddikim and why tzaddikim can be called in these different levels. So maybe we'll roll into that. It's going to take us into like a whole nother thing because it's long. But we're going to get to a point where he references that, and maybe I'll go in there and tinker around with you guys a little bit. But yeah, they're all, and that's the difference. You see, the tzaddik, right? He's by his name, right? Like the same thing you could say for him. Is there any connection with a tzedakah to a tzaddik? Yes, very much so, right? That's why he's called a tzaddik, because his way of being a tzaddik is that it's like his giving nature is in accordance with what's fitting for the world. He's doing the upright thing. He's not just like breaking all the boundaries and being a chassid, which is like super wild, going lifnim mishur sadin, beyond the letter of the law, right? That's when a tzaddik sort of goes to the level of chassid.
Is a chassid like emulating the sphere of like chesed, acting as like an intermediary, because they're pulling from above source, above Hishtalshlus. They're going from Ein Sof to Malchus. So are they like acting like a conduit for chesed, like the spirit of chesed?
That's what's right.
Yes, yeah, to a certain degree. That's kind of why they're called chasidecha. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, back inside, we see that the Rambam explains the difference, right? That chesed gives with what's called haflagas hatov, like just like a overwhelming level of giving, more than what's fit. Maybe by mimer, and then the Rebbe Rashab brings further in the mimer. The mashkatsuv harambam shetzedakah hu ashpala kol echad lefi aroilo. That this that we said it's tzedakah that you give over to each one in accordance with his own boundaries and what's fitting for him. Who kamosha kasuv gabi mitzvah tzedakah. This is why we find in the Torah about the mitzvah of tzedakah. What does it say? Dai machsura asher yechsar lo. Right, when it's he brings here from the pasuk in Parshas Re'eh, where it talks about the mitzvah of tzedakah, and this is what the language is. Dai machsura asher yechsar lo. You have to give him sufficient for his lacking, that which he lacks. Right, it's kind of a double lashon, right? But it's the language of the mitzvah of tzedakah is that you have to give him what he lacks. What does that show you? You're right away taking into consideration the status of the guy and what is his actual lack. You're not just like randomly giving, overlooking the uprightness of what the person needs, right? The mitzvah is built in of tzedakah, of taking into account the status of the person and what he lacks. But Amar Razal and the sages said, Dai machsoro, right? The iata mitzuva la'ashro, that it goes on in sort of darshans, right? In the Gemara of Kesuvos, on this word. Why what does it mean? Dai machsoro, the sufficient, what that which is sufficient for his lack, because it's also giving you like a limit of the tzedakah. It's not just telling you what the definition, it's telling you this is what the mitzvah is. You give him sufficient for his lack, and you are not commanded to make him rich. Right? That's so if you're already like gone past his needs and you're in the realm of making him rich, you're no longer giving tzedakah. You went out of the bounds of tzedakah. That's good for you. Maybe we could say you're giving chesed at that point. But tzedakah, you've already like reached your limit, because as soon as the guy has his needs, your commandment of tzedakah has been fulfilled, right? Whereas the chesed, which is haflagas hatov lehetiv yosem mashahu roi, which in brackets, as we defined it, is the outpouring of giving much more than what is required and what is fit for the guy. Hu hashpa b'riboy. This is called giving like a massive way. Which means you're giving him more than what is required to fill his lack by definition. And that's called ashirus. You're giving him basically wealth. If he has all of a sudden, he's fit for a certain thing, and if he has all the stuff he needs, he's good to go. And then you're going to give him more, that's called making him rich, right? And when it comes to tzedakah, it says you're not obligated to make him rich. So you just give him up to his needs and that's it. So if you any more than that, it's called making him rich. Right? Where tzedakah sort of the obligation falls out, but chesed can kick in. And if you want to make the guy rich, go ahead, give him. That's called chesed, gimilus chasadim, right? It also comes from the word chesed. Now this is where this mimer just starts getting awesome, right? How does this all play out with God? He says in this same way above. This is the case when it comes to the hamshacha into the sphere of Malchus, right? Malchus is like the recipient of God's shefa, because it's the final sphere, right? It's almost, we call it Malchus peh, right? It's the mouth. Malchus is like the mouth of Hashem. So what's the mouth of Hashem is basically what's going to be spoken out into the worlds, right? So what is your mouth? Your mouth doesn't originate anything, right? If anything is going to come out of your mouth, it got originated in your mind or your heart or some kind of experience. Like your mouth is just sort of like, at the end of the day, let's take all Ruvi is and like collect it, and then it'll go out, right? So Malchus is basically the receiver. It's like the recipient of all of Hashem's midos and everything, right?
Let us off.
What's that?
Let us off to collect.
Okay, nice. I see this ulpan is going well. So yes, it gathers. So he says, this is like above, when it comes to the shefa coming, the hamshacha coming into the sphere of Malchus. Dinat tzedakah, hu hamshachas agiloi sheshayach lamalchus. So when Hashem is going to, so to speak, give tzedakah, he's going to give, he's the recipient is Malchus. So when he gives to Malchus in a way which is called tzedakah, then what he's doing, he's drawing down all the revelations that are relevant to Malchus. In other words, he's taking Malchus's unique place into account. What is fit to give to Malchus? There's things that are not fit to give to Malchus. Not everything comes out of the mouth, right? Not everything goes into the mouth. And there's certain things that are like, sort of, for example, like one might say, like Panimius Torah, right? It says Nishikev Nishikas Piyu, right? It's referred to in Shir Hashir, in the secrets of the Torah, as he kissed me with the kiss of his mouth. Why? Because when you kiss someone, your mouth is closed, which means there's something called the secrets of the Torah. I'm just kind of bringing this as an example. Not those secrets are not intended to be spoken, right? For thousands of years, it was prohibited to speak those things, which means there's certain things that not everything goes into the mouth. There's things that are fit to be said, nigla, things that are fit to be revealed, and there's things that are not shayach to come to Malchus Bechla, right? Exactly. So he says that when it comes to giving tzedakah, this is called drawing forth a revelation which is relevant to Malchus. And when you give someone tzedakah, you fill their lack. So it would be a pretty nice thing if everything that Malchus was lacking was Hashem gave tzedakah and was filled, right? Because what is Malchus supposed to be? Gan Eden, basically, right? When Hashem created all those things that were in Gan Eden, when Hashem first created the world, was made from the 10 utterances of creation. What are the 10 utterances of creation? It's Malchus, Hashem's mouth. He uttered all 10 spheros in their sharpest, most beautiful form, right? And he made a perfect world. So the fact that things went haywire from there is that basically the world was lacking its basic needs. It became like a poor person that requires tzedakah to get it back to what it was destined to have to begin with. Its needs, the needs of the world are pretty significant. If the world would have everything it needs, it would look like Gan Eden. So when Hashem gives tzedakah to Malchus, he's basically saying all that you lack, my poor world, in exile and so forth, I'd like to fill your lack. Dai machzor asher yechzor lo. Fill your lack with tzedakah. Yeah, you want to say something?
No, so tzedakah is satisfying the need.
Right. Chesed goes beyond the need.
Chesed is
making him rich.
Abundance. It's abundance.
It's abundance.
It's going beyond.
Yeah, beyond the need.
Beyond.
And it's basically, if you give a person, if the person is not a recipient of tzedakah, because some people, you can't give tzedakah to them. They're not on the list of the tzedakah people because they're not lacking anything, right? They have all their needs met. You can still give them something.
Yeah.
But when you give them something, it's not called tzedakah, it's called chesed.
Yeah.
Because you're basically making them rich to some degree, right? Beyond their need.
Does the world of Geula look like a world of tzedakah or of chesed?
Oh, you want all the secrets in the beginning. What are we gonna teach about? No. You can give also chesed to Malchus. In fact, chasidecha yivorachu ko. Now you see what that means, right? Chasidecha means that you can give chesed, can draw down into ko, which is Malchus. Malchus can receive chesed as well.
Like, why would we need more than why would we have more than what we need in Geula? Because it doesn't matter. Like, we're all like bits on. Like, it doesn't matter what.
Well,
there's a reason for it. We'll get to it.
This is what you were talking to me about yesterday, where we're like messages for Hashem. Where we're like, this needs work, that needs work,
right.
This is lacking,
Right.
that is lacking, and then Hashem comes through and he like provides for those required needs.
Right. Needs. Right.
But Chesed is like, oh, there's something missing here.
No.
Have a bajillion.
No, there's nothing missing.
And then, but
There's nothing missing.
This is missing here, but this isn't missing here. Give them both the same, like, infinite amount of resource, like, just like, yeah.
Just because
that's why like the basic English, even though it's like up to standard, you can always add more to it, make it look even better.
That's right. Yeah, there's something called chesed, right? Like when a person takes when a person gives chesed or takes chesed, if he's really, sometimes people confuse these two things. They think that chesed is tzedakah, but that's what he's trying to explain to you. They're not. You're giving a person a gift that it not necessarily is because he needs it, right? You're giving him abundance. So when Hashem gives tzedakah to Malchus, what's happening is he's filling the lack of Malchus, because that's the definition. The kiyadua. Oh, this gets like deep. I like this part. Kiyadua be'inyan, right? Here, there's a pasuk we're about to roll in from Nehemiah, but we say it also in davening, and this whole idea is quite awesome. He says the pasuk is like this: Ata asisa es hashamayim v'sa'aretz. Simple enough, right? It says, Hashem, you made, the heavens and the earth, right? Ata asisa es hashamayim. But you guys seeing where we are in the brackets? You kind of have to look inside for this
29.
one. Yeah. What does it say? Does it say ata asisa?
At asis.
It says at, right? Mm-hmm. So why does it say at? Actually, you pronounce it ata. It's not at, but it's written at, but you pronounce it ata.
Yeah, it happens a few times.
It happens a lot.
Sorry, right?
Yeah. And what's the idea? Ata chaser hey. That the ata is missing the hey. Well, that is a very deep Kabbalistic thing that's going on in that little word there. What does it mean to be missing the hey?
Nothing.
Well, listen to this. The Zesha Malchus nices makar lahavos es haolamos. This that Malchus takes its role, its destiny, of being the source from which all the worlds are coming into existence, right? Just like the mouth has to go out of the mouth in order for it to exist, so to speak, outside of God and be a creation. Only when Hashem speaks does the world come into be, because before he spoke it, where was the world? It was inside of him somewhere. All that's going to come out of the mouth was previously inside the body in some emotional, intellectual state. But it's not called really a normal world at that point, because the world is something that exists like outside of God. So only when it comes through the mouth and he speaks it all, is that then Malchus takes, like Malchus, the mouth, takes her proper role as being like the creator of worlds, right? So that's what he's saying here, that when Malchus becomes the source to bring the worlds into existence, which is what this pasuk is referring to, right? It says, "Ata sisas hashamayim v'sa'aretz." You made the heavens and earth. So this very pasuk is like when Malchus is going to take her destined role and be the creator of heavens and earth. That the letters are going to come out of Hashem's mouth and make Bri Yitzir and Asiya, etc. Who al yidei shenechzru mimenu hei partzufim. How does this take place? It's by removing 5 partzufim. That's why that ata is missing the hey. It's not the malchus, right? The hey does not represent malchus. The hey represents 5 levels of essentially contractions or removal of 5 levels in order for the malchus to take her role as the creator. What are these 5 levels? And we'll explain this hopefully in great detail. The 5, first of all, what's a partzuf? What does the word partzuf mean? Partzuf means face, right? The word partzuf means face. Why? Now, what does it mean? You're saying like a system, right? Because your face is a system. It is. Like your eyes work together with your nose, with your ears, your eyebrows, and like, in other words, if you want to make like an expression, you have to use the whole system of the face. And it's all like these different parts working together as one, right? So really what it represents in Hasidus, it's funny, but like you got to use the whole face in there, right? For an expression. And what it represents in Hasidus is any grouping of 10 spheros, because the grouping of the 10 spheres is basically like the expressions of your face, but they all work together to sort of be, giving a particular expression of God. You need like a compound bunch of things in any particular world in order to come together and express like the idea that's coming out of that particular area of Hashem.
This is crazy.
So what's that?
I can't believe like I'm alive in a world where Hashem made it like this interesting.
Nice. I couldn't agree more. It's Baruch Hashem. Chasidecha yivarchucha. You can just acknowledge it, but you can, if you're a chassid, you can bring it down. All right. So anyway, what are we saying here? That there's 5 partzufim that have to be removed in order for Malchus to take her place as the creator of worlds. Let's try and look into that. What are the 5 partzufim? Keser, Chochma, Bina, Za, and Malchus. Right? Malchus itself had to be removed, interestingly. And look, I'll just read the next line and then we'll explain. V'zeshen nishar. So what remained? If you took away Malchus, what remained? Zeshen nishar hu rak chitzonius Malchus. Only the external aspect of Malchus, which is called Malchus de Malchus. It's the Malchus of the Malchus, right? So Malchus in general had to be removed, and what remained was just the smallest final part of Malchus, which is called Malchus of Malchus, which in sense would be almost like a 6th level. So that 6th level sort of stayed there, and the 5. I don't want to confuse you with the 6th level. There's 5 levels, but the level of Malchus is sort of like the kli, I guess you could say, where all these different levels of light were removed. Now, what's happening? Let's make it very. I'll try to make it as simple as possible. Keser, Chochma, Bina, Za, and Malchus, right, is basically what I said before. When the words come out, that's because they've left the system. But when the words before they came out, where were they? So those same words that are going to come out, first they were inside of your emotions, because you had some kind of thing ticking emotionally, which is what made you speak, right? That's right. The basic like source of your words that come out of your mouth can come from your heart. You were carrying a feeling and you express it with words. So before the words actually became a thing in and of themselves, they were something inside of your emotion, right? Now that emotion itself, where do emotions come from? The emotions themselves come from the Bina, right? Because you have to meditate. It's right. It says Aim Habanim Smecha. I don't want to confuse you, but it says the mother of children is happy. Who's the mother of the children? The mother is called Bina. Yeah. And who are her children? The emotions. Because when you meditate, it produces the children, which is the emotions.
Zerampin?
Which is Zeran. Well, Zerampin is the emotions. Yeah. Bina is the so to speak, the mother. So right. So you have here now. When it comes to Zerampin, it's a whole partzuf. Yeah. In other words, it's the dimension called emotion, like let's say the vav of Hashem's name. Yeah. And it's even though it's 10 spheros, it's all the 10 spheros which are all residing at the level of emotion.
Okay.
You go up then, where was your emotion before it actually felt itself in your heart? You didn't have the emotion yet. It was in the Bina, the aim, the mother, because you were it was a meditative thing, which then ultimately produced the child of the emotion. So before the emotion was born, it was up in the womb, which is the mind of the mother. Now, what happened to those letters that eventually we dropped apart? Because there's letters of speech that were in the emotion, and the emotion itself is inside of now the Bina. So the letters of speech are also inside the Bina. But now the letters of speech inside the Bina are like doubly negated. They're negated already because the emotions haven't even been born, right? They're still inside the mind of the mother. And so those letters of speech, which are eventually only going to come out when when the emotions express themselves, they're very, very hidden inside of the Bina. Because the Bina basically has the emotion inside of her in pregnancy, and pregnant inside the emotion is the words that eventually are going to express that emotion. You understand what's happening here?
Yeah.
It's almost like Russian dolls. There's like the words that are going to come out, they're in deeper and deeper states of negation inside of their source. So the words, which are essentially the world, they exist in Za, they exist in Bina, but in a deeper state where there's partsufim that are like clouding them from having any matzias, any feeling of self. And then of course you go higher into chokhmah. So before the Bina even expresses itself in the brain, the Bina itself is contained inside the chokhmah. Right? So what's up with those letters? Those letters are now negated inside the emotions, the Bina, and the Chokhmah are all like having their day. These poor little letters are totally negated. They have a long way to go to come out. There's a lot of contractions that have to happen in order for those letters to come out. And there's even one more level where the Chokhmah is inside of the will, the Kesser. Right? So those letters, which is essentially the world, if Hashem wants them to come out, what does he have to do? He has to remove 5 partsufim in order to get those letters to come out. He has to remove the Kesser, the Chokhmah, the Bina, the Zah, and the Malchus in order to get to the Malchus of the Malchus, where those letters can actually exist independently.
Wouldn't remove be like a strange way to put it? Wouldn't it be more like
hide?
Emanate?
What's that?
And then be like, doesn't he have to like emanate the sphere so then it comes out?
No, you see, because that's why this also really helps us with another conversation, which is that we meditate quite often on this concept that Hashem was the same before he created the world and after he created the world, right? And that, if you really think about that, that's really like a bothersome statement. In one hand, it's like your simple faith of a Jew. You're just like, yeah, Hashem is what, he doesn't change. Like, but if you think about it a little bit, you're like, well, what is this? Like this, you're saying me, you yourself, God, are telling me like 5,783 years ago, this was not here. You created it. Now you've created it. It's here. Something happened, right? And you're going to tell me you're the same as you created before you created the world and after you created the world. How do you explain that something happened? If something happened, then you're not the same from before and after, because now there's this, right? And it's not an easy thing to answer this question, but we just answered it actually, because nothing actually happened. Something was removed, not given. So that's why I'm stopping it. It's not an emanation. Emanation seems to imply that something took place. Hashem was like sitting there, and he's like, you know what, I'm going to emanate. And so that would be like a change in Hashem, right? Yeah. What's really taking place is that the world is always there. Those little letters were never not there. It's just they were inside of the emotions, who themselves were inside of the Bina, who themselves were inside of the Chokhmah, who themselves were inside of the Kesser. So there's really no actual existence of those letters, right? They didn't come out yet. But if they're ever going to come out, it's because you're going to basically remove the overpowering light of all those different levels, so that you like are now. What happens to there's not a real removal. Hashem just sort of like makes an invisibility trick, right? Because the levels of Zah and Bina and Chokhmah and Kesser, they're all still there, right? Because everything the world is now as it was before. It's just that tzimtzum makes it that, so to speak, there's a seeming removal of all those levels. So it looks like the letters are like happening on their own independently. Right now, even these letters of this world are inside of the emotions of Hashem, which are inside of the Bina and the Chokhmah and the Kesser. It's just that he's not showing us that. Because if he did, we wouldn't experience ourselves. We would be negated. And that's what it means, Ata asis es hashamayim. You made the heavens, and the word you is without the hey, Because how did you make these heavens? By removing those 5 things, not by adding something, not by emanating something, by actually removing emanations so that it could come to the surface, the hidden letters of existence which were always there but nullified. Make sense?
Yeah. So this would be like the Fnei Tzimtzum. The letters are all the way. I mean, like all these 5 participants are like B'tei Chaginuzes, right? Is that?
Yeah.
Then the first time it would be like.
They're inside of the hidden spheros.
Okay.
And then so you're saying that, but like if they're hidden, they're like, what do you mean? Like they get hidden more?
No, they start to get.
They do get emanated.
Wait. The letters are hidden. The light is revealed. The light, which is like the emotions, let's say, is revealed. The higher things are revealed. That's what makes the letters hidden. Because the letters are but just like your letters, before you say them from your emotions, where are those letters? You can't go find them for me. When you speak them out, you can I can follow the waves of your voice and like it exists, right? In those same letters, before you said them, they were in your mind for sure. Like like exact letters that you speak, it could have been literally in your thought. But even before they were in your thought, they were in your emotion, right? But where were they? You can't point to them. They're unmeasurable. They don't take up space and time. They don't even have like a beginning of existence. They're just there in theory. What's the proof? Eventually, they're going to come out. And they didn't come from nowhere. They came from inside. It's just that when they were inside, they were in a state of negation, but they were always there. That's the reason Hashem was the same before he created the world and after he created the world, because this whole experience of heaven and earth was always there. It was just negated upon negation after negation after negation inside of higher levels and dimensions. So there really is a removal of the higher ones in order for there to be an appearance of the letters.
It's like Hashem just got a haircut and you can see more of his face.
Yeah, that's exactly what it
His
is.
beard.
Yeah.
Like that.
He got a haircut and you could see more of his face. At the same time, he did not get a haircut as far as he's concerned. It's really because nothing actually took place except for the fact that he sort of like is revealing to you his cut hair. But as far as he's concerned, he can still be having that whole thing happen. And it's like the invisible man, right? The invisible man is like he's there and you can't see him. Just because you can't see him, you can see right through him, doesn't mean that he's not like having a whole experience of his own body there. It's just not showing that part to you. His revelation, he's holding back. Anyway, do you understand, Yisrael?
Yeah.
So, what do you mean? I don't understand how this has to do with like Parsufs and like Malchus.
Because the partsuf is just another way of saying the emotions. It's strange, the word partsuf, which sounds very Kabbalistic, with what I was saying, like the emotions, right? That the emotions are a partsuf.
Yeah.
Okay, so instead of saying partsuf, say emotions. Then you understand how this has to do with partsuf. Bina, instead of saying bina, say partsuf. It's a different like grouping of 10 spheres. It's just a higher dimension, right?
Yeah, Bina.
Right, and then Chokhmah is a higher dimension, and Ratzon is a higher dimension. So that's what it means, partsuf. And the idea is Malchus is the letters. So in other words, you can exchange the words partsuf and Malchus with the words emotion, intellect and will versus letters.
They're not like
And then
real
it's not
letters.
sounding so Kabbalistic. What's
They're
that?
not like real letters though, right?
They're real letters. Why not?
Like I don't see a letter right.
That's just because you don't have the eyes to see it. But if you were Adam Arishon and Hashem brought the animals before you, you would be reading them
So
because they are actually made out of letters.
what is the Rebbe talking about the letters then? Like when he says Malchus,
He's talking about the creation of the world. That this world is made out of letters, right?
I don't know. Like I don't understand. It doesn't make sense to me. Is it like?
Does it make sense to you that the world is made out of molecules and like chemical elements?
Yeah. Why can't we
Well,
say
okay.
molecules
So,
instead? Like,
basically, why are they saying molecules? Because they figured out there's like little pieces underlying everything that are stuck together.
Yeah.
Well, another way of calling that is like a word, right? They actually do call it a word. Like the chemical compound of this thing is like C whatever. I'm not a scientist, but it's a word.
Yeah.
Their word and our word are slightly different.
I think the letters are.
The Chiddush is that we've been talking about their molecules in a different language for thousands of years. So you got to give it a little credit. Like we knew about this before they discovered it. We call it the Hebrew letters. They call it something else. The reality is that we're more correct than they are. Their little description of what these things are not as good as God's own description. So you can give it like some kind of like a few letters on an elemental chart. Where do those letters come from? Some guy was like named Phil. He's like, let's call this one PH, right?
Yeah.
But there's a reality of that actual thing which is made by God, and it looks like a chaf, right? Like that's the chaf. It's not a Phil.
I think the
No, I believe there's also there's like
I'm saying molecules and elements, whatever. But I'm just saying, similar concept, right? Like bigger things are made out of little things. If I'm going to tell you you're all made out of molecules, and you're going to like you just did, and you're like, show me the molecules, you fool! Like, what do you think this? I'm some kind of a dummy? Yes, you're some kind of a dummy because there's molecules. Even though you can't see it, it's made up out of little pieces, right? So to say that I don't see the letters is not such a smart thing to say. You don't see the molecules either. It doesn't stop you from being there, right?
So what does it mean, like the Hashem? Like I understand there's like this concept Hashem is like infinite, and then he like removes himself. Like I don't. It's not like a real removing. He's not. Like,
No, that's why I was saying he's like he just removes it as far as the creation is concerned. He removes it from our being able to see it. He doesn't remove it from actually being there. So the Or Ein Sof, for example, is still filling this room in full-blown level, and if there's Or Ein Sof, it nullifies every single other thing that's in its sight. And that's happening right in this space. Just we can't see it. So that's what it means he removed it. He took that away from our vision so that we experience ourselves outside, so to speak, of that place. But really, we're inside of it. So that's what it means he removed it. He made a move, which only God can do, just like he put it there in the first place, which only God can do. He also made it invisible, which only God can do. And how do you make it invisible? By removing 5 partsufim. And that's what it means. Ata asisas hashamayim. Ata, without the hey, is how he made the shamayim. Because if you remove those 5 things, suddenly the malchus appears.
We're in a suit.
Can you say that one more time?
We're in a
If he
suit.
removes those